The yard sounded normal at first. That's the strange part people remember later. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obviously wrong. Just an ordinary morning somewhere around 7:30. A light breeze moving through the maple branches. The low ticking sound of a cardinal hopping across the fence rail. Chickadees calling back and forth from somewhere near the feeder. You stepped outside holding your coffee, still half asleep, the concrete cool beneath your feet, and for a few seconds everything felt exactly the way it always did. Familiar. Safe. Alive. A robin was pulling something from the grass near the edge of the yard. A blue jay screamed once from deeper in the trees. Somewhere overhead, unseen wings shifted through leaves catching the early light. The entire neighborhood carried that soft layer of birdsong most people stop noticing after a while. It blends into the background of life so completely that silence almost feels impossible until the moment it happens. And then it did. Not gradually. Not one bird at a time. All at once. The chickadees stopped first. Then the robin froze mid-step. The blue jay disappeared somewhere beyond the trees, and suddenly the entire yard fell dead silent. No calls. No movement. Nothing except the faint sound of wind brushing through the branches above you. And something about it felt wrong immediately. Your body understood before your mind did. Your shoulders tightened slightly. Your eyes lifted toward the tree line without thinking. Even your breathing changed. People like to believe human intuition is complicated, mystical, difficult to explain. But sometimes it's much older than that. Sometimes it begins with a silence that should not exist. If you're new here, subscribe before you leave, because what you're about to hear may change the way you listen to the world outside your window forever. And the strange thing is, this silence was not empty. It meant something. But what happened next is the part most people never forget. Most people have experienced this at least once, even if they never talk about it afterward. You are outside doing something completely ordinary. Watering the plants. Unlocking the car. Taking the trash cans back up the driveway. And without warning, something changes in the atmosphere around you so subtly that you cannot explain it right away. It is not a sound that grabs your attention. It is the absence of one. The birds stop. And the strange thing is how quickly your body reacts when they do. You look up automatically. Your eyes move toward the trees. Your chest tightens just enough to notice. For a second, the entire world feels like it is holding still. Most people brush these moments aside almost immediately. They tell themselves they imagined it. That they are overthinking. That a quiet yard is just a quiet yard. But deep down, almost everyone recognizes the feeling. Because somewhere inside you, beneath schedules and notifications and the constant noise of modern life, there is still a part of your nervous system listening to the world the same way humans once did thousands of years ago. A sudden silence used to mean something important. It meant pay attention. It meant something unseen had entered the environment. And even now, standing in a quiet suburban backyard with a cooling cup of coffee in your hand, that ancient instinct still wakes up before logic has time to catch it. But the unsettling part is not that the birds stopped singing. The unsettling part is how instantly you felt that they had a reason. The truth is, the birds in your yard are not reacting as separate animals. That is the part most people never realize. The chickadee near the feeder is listening to the robin in the grass. The robin is watching the blue jay higher in the trees. Somewhere beyond the fence line, a crow may already know something changed 30 seconds before the smaller birds react at all. Your yard feels peaceful because the system usually works so smoothly you never notice it happening. But underneath the morning songs and movement is something far more organized. Constant observation. Constant evaluation. Every branch holds a lookout. Every call carries information. Researchers studying backyard flocks discovered that even small songbirds monitor one another continuously, not just within their own species, but across entirely different kinds of birds. A cardinal can react to the alarm behavior of a chickadee. A sparrow can freeze because of the way a jay suddenly changes direction mid-flight. What looks random to us is often a shared language unfolding in real time above our heads. And sometimes the fastest message they send is not sound at all. It is silence. You stood there in the yard long enough to notice small things you normally would have missed. The robin was still near the grass, but no longer moving. The feeder swung slightly in the wind with no birds landing on it. Even the squirrel near the oak tree had stopped halfway across the fence. The entire space felt suspended, as though every living thing had paused together for a reason no human had fully seen yet. And this is where the moment begins to feel different. Because once you notice the pattern, you start realizing the birds may have been aware of something long before you ever were. What makes this even stranger is that researchers have measured how quickly these reactions spread through a flock, and the numbers almost do not feel real when you picture them happening above your yard. In mixed bird communities, alarm responses can move from one bird to another in less than 2 seconds. One chickadee notices movement high in the trees, a blue jay changes posture, a robin freezes in the grass, and suddenly the entire environment shifts before most humans would even lift their eyes from their phone screen. The silence is not confusion. It is coordination. Birds understand something humans often forget. Sound reveals location. A singing bird is easy to find. A quiet bird disappears into the world. That is why the yard changes so suddenly. Not because the birds panic, but because thousands of years of survival have trained them to become still at the exact moment stillness matters most. And once you begin seeing silence this way, something subtle changes inside you too. The yard no longer feels empty when the songs stop. It feels alert. You stood there listening to the wind push softly through the branches above the fence line, and after a while you noticed another strange detail. The silence itself seemed louder than the birds had been moments earlier. The creak of the feeder chain. A dog barking somewhere 3 houses away. Dry leaves skittering across the sidewalk. Tiny sounds you normally never would have noticed suddenly became sharp and distinct, almost as if the world had narrowed its focus for a reason. And this is where many people begin describing the experience in almost spiritual terms. Not because they believe something supernatural is happening, but because the atmosphere changes so completely that it feels as though nature itself is paying attention to something unseen. After a few more seconds, the yard began moving again, but differently than before. A single chickadee appeared first, landing on the lowest branch of the maple tree instead of flying directly to the feeder the way it normally did. It stayed there, tiny claws wrapped around the bark, head turning in small precise movements toward the edge of the neighboring yard. Then another bird returned. A sparrow this time. Not singing, just watching. You noticed how carefully they moved now, how every hop seemed measured, how even the flutter of wings sounded softer against the morning air. And once you see that kind of behavior up close, it becomes difficult to stop noticing it. The cardinal that always arrives at the feeder at nearly the same time every morning suddenly waits on the fence post instead. The robin that usually crosses the lawn confidently now pauses every few feet to look upward before continuing. These are such small moments most people would never remember them later. But standing there in the quiet aftermath of that strange stillness, they begin to feel oddly personal, as though the yard is slowly revealing a language that was always there waiting to be understood. You start realizing the birds are not simply background decoration moving through your life. They are paying attention constantly, measuring distance, watching shadows, reading movement in the trees and sky with a level of awareness humans lost a very long time ago. And the strange thing is, after enough mornings like this, you begin doing it too. Your eyes drift upward more often now. You notice the branch where the blue jay always lands before the others arrive. You recognize the exact pause before the chickadees stop calling. Without fully meaning to, you become part of the rhythm of the yard itself. And this is where the feeling starts changing from curiosity into something much deeper. After that morning, you started noticing the pattern in places you had ignored your entire life. A park that suddenly went quiet before heavy rain rolled in over the trees. A hiking trail where every bird call vanished moments before a deer stepped silently out from deep brush. Even late at night sometimes, standing near an open window, you could feel the difference between ordinary stillness and the kind that seems to press against the air itself. And the more attention you paid, the stranger it became. Because the silence was never completely random. It always arrived with the same feeling underneath it. A subtle shift. A tightening in the atmosphere. As though the natural world had sensed something moving through it before humans had fully caught up. Researchers now know birds can detect pressure changes long before storms arrive. Some species respond to tiny vibrations in the ground. Others can pick up movement patterns humans overlook entirely. But facts alone do not fully explain why moments like these stay with people for years afterward. The deeper feeling comes from somewhere harder to name. standing there in your backyard, watching the feeder sway gently beneath an empty branch. It suddenly became impossible not to feel how connected everything around you really was. The trees, the birds, the wind moving across rooftops, the unseen things constantly passing through the environment without human awareness ever catching them. For most of your life, the yard probably looked quiet because you assumed you were alone inside it. But now the place felt different, alive in a way that was almost unsettling, as though the birds were participating in a layer of reality just slightly beyond human perception. And then, just when the morning finally seemed to settle again, every bird in the yard looked toward the exact same part of the sky. You looked up instinctively, following the direction of their attention, but at first there was nothing there. Just pale morning clouds drifting slowly above the neighborhood rooftops. A plane far in the distance leaving a thin white line across the sky. The maple leaves trembling softly against the light. And yet every bird remained focused on that same empty space as though they were listening to something far beyond human hearing. The cardinal stayed perfectly still on the fence post. The chickadees no longer hopped between branches. Even the crow in the neighboring yard had gone quiet now, its dark shape outlined against the top of an old pine tree nearly 50 yards away. Many people who spend enough time watching birds describe moments like this in ways that become surprisingly emotional. Not dramatic, not irrational, just difficult to fully explain afterward. Because something about collective silence feels older than ordinary fear. It touches a part of the human mind that still remembers living closer to the natural world, when survival depended on noticing tiny changes in sound, movement, and atmosphere long before danger fully revealed itself. Some people believe moments like these are simply instinct operating beneath conscious thought. Others feel there is something almost spiritual about the way animals respond together, as though nature itself is communicating through patterns humans rarely slowed down enough to notice anymore. And honestly, standing there beneath that silent sky, it becomes difficult to dismiss the feeling entirely. Not because the birds are predicting the future or sending supernatural warnings, but because their awareness reminds you how much of the world is still unfolding quietly around us all the time. The unsettling part is realizing the birds may not be unusual for noticing these shifts. The unusual thing may be how rarely humans do. After a while, the birds slowly began returning to themselves. Not all at once. One sound at a time. A soft chirp somewhere near the hedge. The quick flutter of wings crossing above the driveway. Then finally the cardinal called again from the fence post, low and steady, as though the yard itself had taken a slow breath after holding it far too long. The strange tension in the air faded little by little, but something inside you stayed different. You stood there longer than you normally would have that morning. Coffee gone cold in your hand, watching light move across the grass, watching the feeder sway gently beneath the maple branches while the chickadees resumed their small familiar routines, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. But now the ordinary details felt heavier somehow, more alive. You noticed how carefully the robin listened before pulling another worm from the ground, how the blue jay paused between calls to scan the treetops above the neighboring houses. Tiny behaviors that once seemed meaningless now carried a quiet sense of purpose. And maybe that is the real reason moments like these stay with people. Not because they prove anything supernatural. Not because they reveal hidden powers or impossible mysteries. But because for a few brief seconds, they pull you out of the illusion that humans move through the world alone and fully aware. They remind you that life is constantly responding to signals we barely notice anymore. The birds never stopped listening to the environment around them. They never stopped paying attention. Somewhere along the way, most humans simply forgot how. And standing there beneath the soft morning light with the sounds of the yard slowly returning around you, it became difficult not to wonder what else the natural world has been trying to tell us this entire time. That evening, long after the sunlight had slipped behind the trees and the yard settled into the soft blue stillness of dusk, you found yourself looking outside again. Not because you expected anything dramatic to happen. In fact, the opposite. The feeder hung quietly beneath the maple tree. The fence line stood empty except for the faint outline of leaves moving in the wind. Somewhere farther down the street, a dog barked once and then stopped. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary shadows. And yet the world outside your window no longer felt ordinary in the same way it had before that morning. Because now you understood something most people move through life without ever fully noticing. The natural world is listening constantly, watching constantly, responding constantly. Birds do not survive by ignoring the atmosphere around them. They survive by paying attention to the smallest shifts long before danger becomes visible. And maybe there is something deeply human about the fact that moments of sudden silence still affect us so strongly too. Maybe some ancient part of us remembers what it once meant when an entire forest stopped singing all at once. Not intellectually, not logically, but somewhere deeper than language. Many people spend years searching for signs that the world around them still holds mystery, still holds meaning beyond schedules and screens and routines. But perhaps those moments have always been here, hidden in the pause before the storm, hidden in the branch where the cardinal suddenly stops moving, hidden in the strange stillness that falls across a backyard when every living thing senses a change humans have not fully noticed yet. Maybe it was only instinct. Maybe it was only birds reacting to patterns older than civilization itself. But standing there in the fading light, it never felt like only that. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If moments like these stay with you too, quietly lingering in your thoughts long after the screen fades dark, then subscribe before you leave, because there are still so many things happening in the natural world that most of us have never truly learned to see. And somewhere outside tonight, beyond the porch lights and the sleeping houses, something small and feathered may still be listening to the silence long before we do.